Good morning and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today it's basically I'm going to continue on this whole thing of REST APIs. And what I thought I'd do today, I'm going to present my latest article, which is how we can create events in the Outlook.com calendar using the Microsoft Graph REST API. But I thought instead of just giving you here's the function, I thought I'd just show you a little bit. Obviously, we're going to cover the function, but also just show you how I went about building it. How did I know this and that I use this? So just demonstrate a little bit how you break down the documentation a little bit. That way you might be in a position to be able to create your own functions to do other things. Because I'm obviously showing you one-offs here, how to send an email, how to create an event. But if you want to do other things, I'm hoping to impart upon you enough knowledge that you can then go out there yourself and create your own functions with ease, hopefully. So, like I said, my latest article is how to create an event in a user's calendar. So it's not very complicated in reality. And what I'm going to start off by saying here is you need to look over my original video and article, because what you want at the end of the day is you want that download. You want that demo file that you can then just basically open up and start developing on, because it has the entire framework to do the authentication, to do the HTTP requests, to do JSON encoding and escaping of characters, all that type of stuff. So with that out of the way, because all that work's already been done in the previous video and demo, we can really just concentrate on one thing today, which is how do we go about creating events? So calendar events. And it is very simple, and that's the beauty. Once we have that framework built up that takes care of all the rest of it, doing different actions becomes very simple. And we really are looking at creating a single function or two, depends how you want to organize yourself. But it really does become very, very simple at the end of the day. So I'm just going to scroll through very quickly. This is what you'd end up developing, or something similar at least, for sending and creating events. That's it. Okay, I know it seems like a lot, but it truly isn't. We're going to break it down. And I give you some of the materials, the references I used right here. Okay, so this is basically where you start. So let's take a look here. Let's just open these guys up quickly. And we'll go get this one. Okay. So basically, let's jump to the Access database quickly, because that's where we're going to be working. And it's the exact same routine. And we scroll down. So at the top, I always start off by doing the same two things. First, I'm checking if my variables have values. And if they don't, then I tell it, go get them from the table. Then, now that I know I have stuff loaded into memory, and I have hopefully a token and things like that, hopefully I'm still working off of a previous authentication, but even if we aren't, not the end of the world. Then I go and I check my token, and that's what's going to happen. If everything turns out and it was able to refresh the token, or the token's valid, then everything's glorious, and it just continues. In the event there's a problem, it will just open up the authentication form, and the person will have to authenticate, username, password, etc. So this is the typical behavior, nothing extraordinary there. Now, then we come down to here. We're going to be building our requests to the server, to Microsoft. And you have to put a content type, the URL of where you're going to be sending that request. How did I know this? Well, this is where the documentation comes in. So we start here under create an event, and all sorts of information. But if you scroll down a little bit, they give you here HTTP requests, and they show you calendar event, calendar ID event. So they give you some examples. And if you even continue a little further down, you'll see concrete HTTP And this is the URL they use. And they tell you here the content type is application JSON. So you can literally just copy that, and we're making a content type of application JSON, and we're using that URL to post our request. So all of that information is here. And if you look, they'll even tell you here, the request body can use a post operation. So I don't need to do anything in particular, because by default, if you come down to the function that actually does the request, it by default does a post. Yeah, we can put it in here if we absolutely wanted to. You could put in that this is a post, but there's no need. It's the default value anyway. So we don't need to even to worry about that. Next, if you look at the documentation, they'll also indicate here the response back from the server. If successful, when you make the request to create an event, it will return a 201 created response. Okay. So now when I'm coming here and I'm creating my call to their server and asking them to process my request, I can now come here and check, was it returned as a 201? Because I know that if it's a 201, everything was successful. So there you go. Very straightforward. Now, building the rest of this. How did I know what went where? Well, we go back to the documentation. So you have some examples here. Okay, so this is a great starting point, but it's certainly not complete. Okay, and you scroll through, there are many, many more examples. So you can learn and build off of, like you see here, the attendees. You can see here, oh, this is how I have to organize myself if I want to send multiple. So you put them between the curly brackets and you commas separate them, and you can tack on as many as you want. Okay. And you also notice here that you've got a type required. Okay. You also see here how you set the start and end dates if you're not using, I believe, UTC format. So you can specify other date and times, but then you have to include the time zone, which is where this default time zone comes in. So you have to be using one of the entries in this third column here, which is all pretty standard, okay? So I'm in Canada, I'm Eastern Standard. It's very simple to use. So this is a great starting point. And typically, in most instances, if you look through here, you'll see they have examples for almost everything you want to work with. Photos, mail, the drive. You should have people. People is what they call contacts. And et cetera, okay? So you can go through all of this stuff, and if you want to add new things to do, tasks, notes. So this is where I started. I copied this down, and then I started wrapping VBA around it. So now you've got to double quote all the single quotes. And then you get into, okay, that's glorious, but I don't see the option for what I wanted. Well, then you can also look into, here they have, blah, 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 represents of an event object. So if you click on that and you go to the event, here you're going to get a breakdown of all the methods. Okay, I'm not so much interested in the methods right now, at least. What I'm interested in are all the available properties. And this is where I was able to find much more than just their basic example. And you also are able to go and get more information about it. So if you come and you take a look here, let's say on location, you can open up location, go into location, and once again, scroll down. And here you'll get, let's say I want to add the address. Well, you can. There's an option for putting, like you see here, address. And then you're going to put in the physical address. So let's open that up. And now you're going to see that this is the way that you have to send the information if you're sending an address. So that you have to use these properties: city, country or region, postal code, state, and street. So postal code is the same as zip. Okay. State still applies to, let's say, Canadian provinces. So it's just, that's the label that they've given that property, but you just populate your information. Since they're strings, they have to be between quotation marks. So all of this is how you go about it. And as you can see, When you're specifying a location, you should give a location name. You can optionally give an address. You don't have to. You could even give the GPS coordinates if you wanted to. You can add the location's email address, and people have an email address if they want to communicate. So that's how you dissect this, and you just go through one by one by one. So similarly to organizers, if you scroll up, you also have attendees. And if you see, so attendees are the people you're inviting to your event, your meeting, whatever. And if we open that up, you'll come to attendees and you'll see what you have as options. So you have to supply the email address, and then you can give other options to them. Propose new time. Status, the type. Is this a required attendee, an optional attendee, or some type of resource that you're like booking? So you can go about all these things. And as you see here, if you look at email address, includes the name and STMP address of the attendee. So you can look in and click here and go further in depth into that property, and it will show you, if you want, you can specify the address, so email address, but you can also, if you want, specify the name. So then when you look at it in your calendar, it will actually show the name, not just the email address. Sometimes it makes it easier to recognize people or not. You don't have to, these are not all mandatory. So the choice is yours. But you get an idea of how this works. It's all a question of digging. The status, time slot, as you can see, you can clearly see when there's something that you can click on and go get more information versus the ones where it just stops. It's a simple string entry and here are your values. Okay? So that's basically what I did. I heavily relied on this and then clicked to go get more information on all of these. And with that, I was then able to basically create this. And therefore, I started off by creating a bunch of input arguments. So the subject, the body, the start and end time, the time zone. And then I decided that, is this an all-day event? And you're going to see we have to do something special if it is. The reminder, do we want to set a reminder for this event? Then we set here required attendees and optional attendees. Location, name, and address, and then the importance level. And, once again, like I say, you just come here and you scroll up, we'll find it. Come on, importance. So you have an option here for the importance of the event, and you'll see here low, normal, or high. What I've noticed is through the Outlook.com, I don't really see that. However, when the email is sent out, because I've done tests, my recipients do see that indicated very clearly. All-day event, like I said, there's something special here because, as they say, if true, regardless whether it's a single day or multi-day event, start and end times must be set to midnight and be in the same time zone. That is critical, must be set to midnight. So that's why in my VBA, I had to do an adjustment. So if you come here, then you scroll down. So we've covered all of this. And we just start. The basic information was what I qualify it as. So we start our JSON string, and then I just input, just to have the metadata there of when this was created. We're going to pass it our subject. We're going to build a body. Now the body has to have a content type and a content. So the content type, I'm just leaving it HTML because then it can comprise all types of bodies. If you set it to text and someone sends an HTML, then it won't work. This will work with just plain text and HTML. So makes it simple. And then we're going to use our S body. So if we come and take a look here, back at our documentation, we scroll up to body, you get item body. And if you look at item body, like I showed you, I have content and content type. Content type can be text or HTML. That's how I knew. So once that's all done, then I decided to work with the dates. Well, the dates, we have a start and an end date. So if we come here and take a look, we can look at the end. The start's the exact same thing. Date, time, time zone that the event ends. So by default it's in UTC, but if we specify a time zone, then we change that. So if we open it up, you come here, you see date, time, and time zone. So once again, you come here and you're going to see I have a start, date, time, time zone. I have an end, date, time, time zone. Now, like I said, because of the start and end dates and times, I included the option for all day events, and that's where we do a little juggling. So if it isn't an all day event, we just jump down here and our start and our end are whatever was supplied by the user. And then it goes and it puts them in the proper places with the time zone that was specified. And it will come here, and because this is false, it will set the is all day as false. So everything's fine. However, if we're in the case that it is an all day event, then we're going to do a little juggling. We're going to take whatever the user set as the end date and we're going to push it by a day, because we need to set it as the midnight of the following day in all instances. So that's what I end up doing. So I just add an extra day, and then I take whatever they gave us and I set, remember what they said, the date time has to be midnight. So I set everything to midnight, regardless of what they supply as a time. We set it to midnight. And this, therefore, then sets everything properly for the start and end date for an all-day event. And then here, because this is set as all day, it will also set the is all day property to true. Then we look at the reminder. The reminder is very simple. Reminder, minutes before start. It's expecting an integer. Number of minutes before the event start that the reminder alert occurs. So really simple. So we just come here. If the person sets the reminder to and something other than 0, then we're going to come and we're going to set the is reminder on to true. And we're going to set the reminder minutes to start to whatever value they gave us. So for half an hour, you put 30. For a day, you put 1440, etc., etc. However, if the person chose to put 0 as the reminder, so they don't want a reminder, then we don't need to worry about the reminder minutes before. All we need to do is set the is reminder on to false. It's that simple. The location. Well, we've already looked at it briefly, but we'll just quickly refresh our memory. Scroll back up to location. And as we still have it open, yes, we do. The location can be comprised of an address, a display name, coordinates, email address. All these different properties are available to us. I, depending on what I was working on, chose to use display name and address. So I come here and I start off by, I'm always going to supply a display name. So I set a location property, I open my brackets, and in there I now set the display name property to whatever's supplied by the user. Now, the location address, however, in my usage is optional. So first I check that one was supplied, because if one wasn't supplied, there's no need to include anything. So it would just skip over this. If one was supplied, well then I'm expecting it to be comma delimited. So I split it into an array, and then I supply the array components to the different properties. So I'm expecting this string here to include an address, a complete address, where it's going to have the street, comma, city, comma, state, comma, country or origin, region, comma, and postal code. Once that's all done, I simply close that original location property entry. And my location is done. And it's no harder than adding, if you wanted, coming in here and adding in the GPS coordinates if you wanted. You'd do another thing where you'd validate that information was supplied, and then you'd simply add it in. The attendees. Now, the attendees is a little trickier because attendees have different types, right? So they can be required, optional resource. And then you never know with what they're supplying you. I've set it once again as a string entry. So it's just a semicolon separated listing of email addresses. but this could easily also be an array or a collection. So, this code here could easily be changed. And there might be benefits to going the route of an array or a collection, because then you could have email address name. Currently, the way I have it set up is I'm only taking the email address. How it works, like I say, we're going to start off, we'll look at the property for 2 seconds, the attendees, which is here. And we should probably come back up here. Attendees, it's a collection of attendees for the event. And in it, for each attendee, we have to enter, like I say, an email address if you want, the type if you want. So to do it, it's very simple. But basically, I start off here by looking at my required attendees. That's my argument that I use when I call the function. And I'm going to come and I'm going to remove any trailing semicolons. So when I perform my split, I don't get an empty blank argument to work with later on. Because of that, now I can perform my split properly, and now I'm going to have an array of the different attendees, required attendees. Now I can iterate through them by creating a for loop here that's going to go from 0 to the number of entries in my array. And for each one, I'm now going to build up that JSON string. So we're going to build this guy up. Now, obviously, I'm not using status, propose, new, things like that. I'm just concentrating on email address and type currently. So you're going to see here, I have email address, and then here I put email address. And below it, I put the type. So here, the type is required, because I'm in my required attendees. If you come down to the optional attendees, then here the type is optional. So it's going to do this for all of them. It's going to build it up, and then it comes out here and it closes that collection. So now we've built up all of our attendees. Then lastly, we come in here, the importance. Well, I created an enum to make it simpler for using the function. And basically, we're going to use that enum to check what is the importance of this event and put it back into textual, because as we saw here previously, in the importance, it's expecting a textual value of low, normal, or high. So not the numeric enum value. So I have to convert my enum back to text, which is what I do here. So event importance will be high if it's 1, if it's 2, it's normal, if it's 3, it's low. And then we come here and we simply set the importance is equal to whatever was decided by our case statement. So it will be high, normal, or low. So then when that's all completed, we close our original opening JSON curly brackets to close off the JSON string. I do a substitution of all of my VBCRLFs, and you're going to be saying to yourself, well, Daniel, why are you adding them if you're just removing them? They are there for exactly this purpose right here. If I need to debug them, having those line returns and whatnot drastically simplifies my ability to view what is being generated in the immediate or output it to a text file or whatever the case may be. Makes it much easier for me to dissect and review what is being generated. So I much prefer to have them all throughout my code, because debugging becomes much simpler. If I don't do that, which is an option, you can always use, there are what you call JSON string prettiers. There are a ton of them out there online. You just copy your single line JSON string, toss it in there, and it will add back all of these line feeds and indentations and whatnot. But I prefer to do it this way personally, then I don't have to rely on third-party tools. And it is just as simple as running a simple replace and remove them. Once I've got my JSON string the proper way, I now can use my send request function. So it will send to the URL, to the content type, and our request that we specified. And here we're telling it you have to use authentication. So you have to use that access token. Without it, it will fail. And then I have some debugging here where I was doing some checking and validation as to what gets returned. And then we're just waiting back here that the status returned was the 201, just like the documentation stated. And then if that comes back as 201, everything worked out grandiose, everything's fine. If it didn't, well, then this is going to return false. It didn't manage to create the event. And then you're into debugging. So, perhaps you want to add, you could do else here, and maybe this is where this should go. We don't need to debug print continuously. We just need to debug print in the case that there are errors, for instance. So anyway, it gives you an idea of the process. None of this is earth-shattering. It's just a question of going back and forth between the documentation over and over and over. If we come back to the end, for instance, and I go back to the date time, they show you here some examples of what they're expecting. And they also mention here, they want the ISO 8601 format. And this is what it is. You always in ISO go from the largest to the smallest, okay? And as such, that's what we do. And they put a T separator, okay? So that's why in our functions, you're going to see I'm doing that exact same thing. I'm doing a format into the ISO format. So I'm doing the year, month, day. I add the T, because that's required to separate the date component from the time component. And then I have my hours, minutes, and seconds. And we're going to do that for both the start and end. I also use it up here when I'm doing the create date time, as you can see, year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds. I'm also using a special function that's available on my website, by the way, to get the UTC date time based on my current time. So I had developed this a while back. It's on my website, like I say. It uses simple JavaScript. It's the easiest way I found, avoiding any need of APIs or any of that stuff. And it works remarkably well, especially for this type of scenario. It's perfect. And there you have it. We now have a function. It's a pretty decent function. Don't get me wrong. You can add to that. I don't have every single property that's listed here there yet. I haven't worked on adding attachments. It's not something I typically do in my meeting requests personally. If I want someone to have attachments and things like that, normally I'm going to send them an email. I'm not sending it as part of meeting requests. But, if you want to, you can explore that. You can get into the has attachments, and you can get into the, there's another property relating to that. Because this just says it has one, then you have to actually include it. You can get into, is it an online meeting? In which case you can supply things like a link to the team meeting and things like that. There are all sorts of things. Recurrence, that's another one that probably I'll work on to add to my function, but I didn't as of yesterday when I was putting this out on my website. But you get the idea. It's always the same thing. You're just coming here, you're looking at what properties are currently available to you through the REST API, and you click to follow to get more information on it. And then you then take that knowledge and try to come and put it here. I didn't start off developing this function like that, okay? Let's go back to the basics. Maybe I jumped over this a little too quickly. But let's say we take what I did originally is I copied this guy. Let's create, and then I said I'm going to create a function, ABC, and what I did is I pasted this into there. And I started by making this work without any input arguments. So doubling up all the quotes, adding quotes everywhere else that it was needed, and I simply tried sending this verbatim, so the sample that Microsoft provided, as my HTTP request. Once I knew I was able to send what Microsoft said should work, and that worked, then I started saying, okay, now I want to replace this as a variable. So I made this into a variable. Okay. You get the idea. Oops. So you get the general idea. And then I added that argument up here, right? Etc., etc. So it's a slow process, but I didn't go head first saying, oh, I'm going to get it right off the bat, because then you have so many variables. Did I mess up the URL? Did I mess up the content type? Did I mess up something else? So I started simple. I started by, let's take what they provide and make sure that my HTTP requests and all of those authentications still work properly. They did. The request that Microsoft gave worked properly. Yes. Now I can start breaking down and adding to it. And that's what I did. I started with this and then I added on. Transaction ID, I knew no. And I was able to come. And then I was able to come here and I was able to say, okay, I want to add in the importance. Right? We saw that. And I knew based on documentation that it would be a text, and you can do that. So that's how you approach it. Okay, don't think you can jump in. Well, some people can, don't get me wrong, but it's much simpler and safer to first start off with a sample and then start expanding upon that sample. And then you end up becoming and getting to this point. And like I said, always, the debug becomes your best friend. You debug print the request, so add a breakpoint and do a debug print before you remove the VB-CLRF, okay? And now you can test this guy out as much as you want. You can validate that the string being generated by your call is good and valid. You can also use the Microsoft has a good REST API Explorer. So you could build up your request and add it in here and test it out to see that it's going to work properly. Don't forget though, you have to switch here and switch it properly. It's a post. You have to put the proper URL here. So these, you have to configure it properly. But once you get it set, you can test and see in real time, and then you can sort of eliminate potentially other issues within your framework. Okay, and you can validate that, yes, the request is being sent, still isn't working in VBA. Now you know your request is accurate, so now you got to start tracking down where the error might be elsewhere. So beyond the documentation, you have all of these things. Okay, well, I think I've covered it pretty well. You definitely have a starting point. I already have all of this on my website. Don't worry about copying this. Just go on the website and copy paste from there. And the last thing I'm going to mention, however, is obviously what we discussed previously when we were developing it, if I look at the authentication, is we would set up our scope for mail, right? We set up our mail here. So we did offline access, mail read write, and mail send. One thing that's critical, though, is that's all mail. Today we're talking about the calendar. So you have to ensure that you go through your Microsoft Entra account, go on to your application once again, and enable the API for calendar. And once again, you need to give yourself the permission required to do what you're trying to do. So for this one, I went, if you didn't notice, I added the calendar read write. That enables me now to create events like I'm showing you today. If you forget that, okay, you create this beautiful function, and then this applies to anything. I want to create a function for notes or tasks. Fine. And you go and you run it, and it's always not working. I got the right, I've checked it, I've validated, it's working on the Graph API Explorer. Make sure you're paying attention when you get down here to the response you're getting back from the server. Okay, make sure you're checking this response. In the event of the calendar and you forgot to add the API, you actually get back this guy here. You're going to get back a 403 where you're getting access denied. Access is denied, check your credentials and try again. It was an informal way of telling me, hey, buddy, you don't have the scope permissions. You don't have the API permissions to work with the calendar. So once I got this error, I clued in and I went into my Entra account, into the API permissions, added it, and authorized it. And then I tacked it on here to my authentication process. I added that extra scope that I needed. So now when it did the authentication and things like that, it was making sure that that token that gets generated has authorization on calendar read write. And now my function works perfectly. And it's very quick. If you haven't noticed, REST API is quick. There's very little delay in general because it's just sending a simple text request to a server. So there's no images, there's no loading libraries and all this stuff. It's very quick. Thank you very much for being here, spending your time with me. I hope this has been informative. I hope some of you now feel comfortable in potentially tackling their own project, whether it be, like I say, tasks, notes. Maybe you want to, instead of creating an event, you want to read the events of the day. Maybe you want to update an event. All these things become possible because when you perform, let's say, a create event, okay, I'll end on this quickly. I'll do another video when I dig into this more in detail, but part of the response you get back, okay, this response text, even in the event of success, it always sends you back information. One of the things here, this is an example of some of what gets sent back. And one of those nifty things that you get is you get different IDs, unique identifiers for the event that's just been created. Then you're able to use that information should you ever want to change it or delete it, okay? So it becomes important. Yes, here I've created it, it's done. But perhaps, I'm not saying you have to save everything, but perhaps some elements of the returned response become worthwhile to store in your table. That way you can still interact with it if you need to. And all of that is still here, okay? You have that ability, and if you look here under events, you have different options here: list, get, delete. So you have these different options. All of this is available through the REST API. Today we looked at creating an event, okay? That was the create event. But if you needed to, you can change events, like I say, and delete them. So you just come down here and you say, I want to delete an event. Okay, so you click on delete event, you scroll down a little bit, and you start looking at what are they saying. Well, it becomes very simple. You're going to use a delete instead of a post. You're going to use the URL that they're saying, and you have to supply the event ID that you want to delete. So that's why I'm saying if you come here, part of the response is you get that ID. So if you had stored this in the table and you have this available to you, it becomes exceedingly simple for you to now delete it with a simple one-line request. And then they show you here a simple example. And the same is true for every other thing. Like you get the general idea. This is just opening your door. What I showed you today, create an event, is your foot in the door of coding the calendar. But what you can do is quite extensive. So this is the first video on calendar. I did a first video on mail, and I'll have to continue doing more. Anyway, I said it before, I mean it this time. This is it. Thank you all. Have a great day. And if you don't mind, like, share, subscribe. Leave me some comments below. Things that I've omitted that you'd like to see me incorporate into this function. Does this meet most of your needs, or do I need to start adding other properties here? Would that be of value to you? What should I continue to explore with the REST API? Do you guys prefer me continue working with the Graph API, so Microsoft, or would you like me to continue to look at the Gmail, other REST APIs? I know I've already had one comment with regards to the Zero REST API. I didn't fall on deaf ears. It is on my list of things to possibly explore down the road. And we'll stop there. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day.